Great, thank you for coming at the very end. And I know I'm in the way of alcohol and food and partying in Madrid. So seriously, thank you so much for coming. I too wish I was out there and having alcohol and beer and partying, but there's plenty of time for that later, so let's get serious about this. So I'm Ted Yang. Thank you again for coming. This masterclass is using AI to enable ageless peak performance. If you want to learn how to pitch like a rock star, you are too late. So hopefully you got some extra stuff if you're there from the last guy, because that guy was really good. So, okay, here we go. This is me. Oh, it's so small. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how this was going to be. So I will read some of this if you can't read what this is. But basically, I'm an engineer who didn't do any engineering. I went to MIT, did my bachelor's and master's, and then I did a career in finance. I was a former hedge fund CTO in that industry. And then I became a serial entrepreneur about 15 years ago. And I have since become a speaker and author, thanks to my book. This is mostly based on the book, which is that one over there. And yes, I'm going to give away those copies, and more on that later. I also, somewhere along the line, founded Connecticut's largest COVID relief fund, which is relevant to this discussion, and we'll get this back here. And I'm also involved in higher education, which is also relevant to this discussion, and we'll get you back there. And the last thing about being an Emmy-nominated writer is actually true, which is a very interesting story that I'm not going to tell you right now. So this is my contact information. It'll be up again later, but anything you want to do or talk about, please just drop me a line. Okay, so this is not an AI tools session. So if you're here to learn specific things about tools or prompts or tricks with prompts, that is not the point. But they make me submit this deck early. By the time I would have submitted this deck, it would have already been out of date. So I'm not going to teach you about any of that kind of stuff. What I am going to teach you about is using AI as a platform for improving your judgment. I believe that judgment is the most important thing that anyone can develop, young or old, in the AI era. This is truly what cannot be replaced by AI, at least not for the foreseeable future. 20 years from now, I don't know, all bets are off. But for now, this is the most important thing that you can keep, is your judgment. And that empowers learning, creativity, and leadership. And so much of the message that we hear right now is the opposite. So much of the message of what we hear right now is about efficiency, right? Maybe some of you yourselves or in your own companies, you've seen initiatives where executives are saying, look, I'm giving you AI tools. I want this to make you guys perform harder and better. That's true, but the problem is it isn't so much about doing it faster or saving yourself time. It really should be about how can you work at your best for longer. So the first thing I want to do is have you think about this. This says 60 seconds, that's way too long. But let's just think about this for 10 or 15 seconds. And I'm going to ask them to go around the room a little bit afterwards, okay? But if you want to talk, okay? But what about your own performance needs the biggest boost, okay? And if you feel that you're doing great, that's great. Thank you so much. The door is over there. You don't need me. But for everybody else, please, if anyone wants to say anything, just get up and yell, or if you want a microphone or something like that. Anybody? Yeah, go. Come on.
I'm Luis Antonio, CEO and founder from Dynamisa. We are developing solutions for accelerating the energetic transition and efficiency energy to companies. Yeah. Okay,
so what about you, though? I don't want to know about your company. Tell me about you, Luis.
Yeah, I'm the CEO and founder. I'm a civil engineer, have a master's...
No. Let's get back to the question. The question, though, is what about you yourself that you wish you could do better or perform better?
I wish to do better at selling my idea.
Okay, all right, good. Somebody else?
Attention, focus.
Attention, focus, okay. You can introduce yourself, so don't let me, but introduce yourself if you like, but I really want to hear attention and focus, good. Selling, so communication, really, right?
I'm Semih Seçer. I'm the CEO founder of PeerBee.
Okay.
We are an AI workforce working along with the humans. And I want to improve my closing the sales.
Wow, this is a common theme. So that's my next masterclass. How to close deals. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So, but communication, right? Or is it more research and preparation?
Communication.
Negotiation, communication strategy.
I give great demos. Everybody's happy, and then I tell them, talk to you guys later. I say thanks for your time instead of, closing it.
Okay, okay, all right, well, that's fair, that's fair. So I'm not going to answer your specific questions right now, but we'll get to them, okay? But the point here is the things that you talked about, right? Attention certainly being one. The ability to stay on top of, because we're talking about your clients, the ability to communicate well with your clients, right? This is what I'm talking about when we're talking about using AI to stay at the top of the performance curve, right? It's to speed up what slows down and to amplify things that are already improving to make them even more powerful, right? So this slide is a gigantic generalization, okay? And we'll go into more specifics here. But you talked about attention, right? Attention, speed, and these kinds of things are the types of things that get worse with age, right? And so some of the people here that are older, right? I myself am 50, okay? I know I don't look it, but thank you. So as you get older, what happens is your ability to be as quick as when you were younger, right? Because, and this is like neuroscience through MRIs, they've actually validated that this is true, okay? And there's supposed to be something that makes up for that, and that is the high performance part that comes from pattern recognition, again through neuroscience, the ability to recognize patterns, to literally say, I have seen this before, I know where this is going to go. That is also called strategic thinking or judgment, okay? Now, that's because cognition is very complicated. There's all these different things, which I'm not going to read in here, but a lot of these problems, and you said some of these, but I think there's more, right? Plenty more, right? That are not just one thing, right? But in general, we are all hoping that we can learn more as we get older. So the point of a new performance plateau, the point of saying that you can perform at your peak agelessly is all about extending the amount of time that you can operate at your highest level. So you go back to those two curves, right? And what you see traditionally, there's no timeline on this, but what you see traditionally is that the peak that you're able to be at the maximum is usually between 40 and 55, right? For many careers, at least that's what it's traditionally be. Do any of you believe that's going to happen anymore, right? Do you really think that's going to happen? The reality of it is people want to get up to the top faster, and you want to stay at the top for longer, right? And so the bigger problem that I see, and that we've all seen, is that with AI, the messaging has not been about humans. It's not about you. It's not about what your problems are. It's not about solving your problems. It's about, yes, efficiency, but it's about trying to talk about taking existing workflows and making them go faster. So instead, what we're going to talk about is our principles that enable you to use your own capabilities better. And this will get us to the communication, right? Being able to communicate better and understanding what your clients are talking about. So these are the 4 principles that I use in the book, okay? And in the book, we go from principles to superpowers to an operating system for how you can use this in your day-to-day life, okay? The first one is treat AI like an intern and not an oracle, right? And the idea here, I think I'm going to go through these in more detail, right? So, but let me just give you a quick overview of what these are, right? So the idea here, right, is pretty basic. Some of these I think maybe a little less understandable, but the whole point of the 4 taken together, right, treat AI like an intern, not an oracle, aim first, then accelerate, make AI flow, and keep your judgment at its center. The entire point of the 4 together are principles that should last irrespective of the technology that you're actually using. Now, throughout this entire talk, when I say AI, I mean large language models, I mean chatbots, I mean transformer-based, all that stuff, okay? And derivative technologies, okay? So the principles here should stay true, irrespective of the new release from Claude, the new release from Gemini, whatever the hell you might want to use, but local model, cloud model makes no difference. Again, we will go through each of these in more detail. Now, this one, I would just think a little bit more, okay, and I'm not going to go around just because I think we can save the time here, but where are you using AI to move faster but not think better, right? Now, how many people here are doing the latter? How many people are using AI to think better, either yourself or in your workplace? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so some people, that's good. That's good. So look, you're ahead of the curve, right? So one thing, and this is not on this slide, so it's a little bit out of order, but I just want to say one thing about this. First of all, thank you for coming, but understand that the people that are way ahead in using AI at most are a couple years ahead of you. Reality, they're not even ahead of you, right? So no offense to Sam Altman or any of these people, they have no idea how their models actually work, right? And obviously he doesn't, but I mean, the people who are the actual PhD scientists that are developing the model, they also have no idea how they work because they're very complicated. In fact, right, in Anthropic's case and in other cases, these models are using themselves to write themselves. So you're telling me you know deep down how that works? right? And even if this was other technologies like neural networks, by design, you cannot hold a multi-billion variant model in your head. You have no idea how this works. So the reality of this is you are not that far behind. So if you're not even using AI, right? If you're not even using it in your day-to-day, I'm not sure why you're here. But the fact that you're here, I assume all of you do use it, but understand the next level is not just faster, but again, to think better. So now I'm going to go through each of the principles, and I think this is where you're going to hopefully get the most value. But if you don't, well, I don't know. I mean, no refunds from me. You can go ask South Summit. Okay, treat AI like an intern, not an oracle. Here we go. So AI is smart, helpful, fast, but fallible and overconfident. This is one of those things where if you've not heard these types of words before, now that I have said these words, they will stick in your head forever. Okay? Seriously. Because an intern, right, whether you've been an intern or you've hired an intern, you worked with interns, you understand will never admit they don't know something, right? Think back to the beginning of your own career. Would you ever, look, you're trying to get a job. Are you going to tell your boss you don't know the answer? No, you're going to say, I did this, this is really good. And now if your boss takes that and turns it, presents it to the CEO, they're going to get fired. So why would you do that with AI? And yet, you do see that. So again, I'm not going to read all these boxes, but these three approaches are really how you can use AI as a thinking partner and not as a source of truth. So I hope you're already using some of these. Again, the point of this as the playbook, as you see in the actual book, it's not to read this cover to cover. If you already know it, go ahead, skip ahead, right? But the idea here is to use AI in a way that you would treat a very eager and very smart employee, right? Because if you do that, then you're going to be able to keep yourself in control, which is the fourth principle. Okay, principle 2, aim first, then accelerate. So AI makes you go fast. We talked about this very, very much. But the problem is we have not changed, and this is not the fault of any particular person. We haven't changed our ability to aim faster. So in the technology space, say product management, you have now, again, using AI tools, developers that are coding, let's call it theoretically 10 times faster. The product management process is not caught up, right? So in my previous panel, I was talking about how AI is changing the way that we invest as VCs or as investors. And the point is, what used to be a 6-month product cycle, or even longer, right, is now a weeks-long product cycle, or a week-long product cycle, which means we are only now trying to figure out how to aim faster. But without aim, speed without aim only gets you to the wrong answer faster. Again, this sounds very obvious, and it should be obvious, because if it wasn't obvious as a principle, you wouldn't remember it. So my whole point is to get you to remember this, because this is a way that you can think clearly in your head and say, hold on, I need to make sure that our aim is correct before we go faster, right? Now, how do we do this? Because if you use AI, you ask AI itself. Let's talk about you in terms of closing. You will ask it, hey man, how do I close this deal? It will tell you all sorts of crap. If you go and use that, you're going to lose clients, right? You're going to lose deals, okay? Obviously. But there are definitely some approaches, which I'll go into, okay? But the idea is, the first thing what you should do when you ask a question of how do I close this client is you should ask it in a quote-unquote safe way where you already know what the answer looks like, right? Because when you know what the answer looks like, then you can perfect the aim. You can perfect your prompt. You can perfect the way in which you work interactively with AI before you go and risk anything, right? Before you use it for a live client, use it on the client that you just closed or failed to close. Right? Hey man, critique my email flow and tell me how I went wrong, for example. Okay? And then, when you feel more confident that you're going to get the right answer, then, only then, do you say, now analyze my entire CRM database to see how the approach should be. Right? Okay. Principle 3, make AI flow. So how many here have heard of the flow state or the concept of the flow state? Anybody? Nobody? One person, 2 people, that's the same people. You guys read a lot of books. Okay. The flow state, right? It traditionally comes from music and athletes, right? High performance individuals, right? Like a LeBron James, okay? Or Yo-Yo Ma, okay? And these guys talk about, and they've actually put, these guys into, they put the skull caps on these guys, they throw these guys in MRI, and they have them visualize, dunking the basketball or playing the cello or whatever, okay? And they say, how do their brains work when they're really achieving flow state? And in flow state, they're performing at their best without consciously thinking about their motion? Do you think LeBron James thinks about, oh, I'm going to dribble the ball, or even I'm going to pass the ball? Honestly, right? You've heard, like Michael Jordan, right? I don't know what's going on. I know where Pippen's going to be, right? Sorry if you're not a fan. Okay, but you get the idea of you don't want to be thinking about the tool as a tool. You want it to be taking on your work, and you want it to be basically taking on a new workflow that is more efficient without your intervention. This is a goal, right? And the reason I wrote this as a principle, it's because if you are able to achieve this, then you know you've got something right, okay? Because the impedance of thinking about a tool, writing the prompts, reading, oh man, I don't know what's going on here, blah, 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 blah. Oh, you gave me the wrong answer again. All that stuff slows you down. And worse, it gets you wrong answers, right? And this is what the last box here, which is about drift. Okay, sometimes you can get into flow, you can start thinking that things are going well, but what happens is that they're actually not. You're actually drifting farther away from the answer, but it looks like progress. Again, we can talk about some more of these details, but the idea of flow state is something that you can enter into, you can start to be able to perform with AI in, let's call it, a pretty invisible sense. That should be your goal. You should not have to think about what you're doing specifically with prompts or anything else. Now finally, the last principle is the most important one, right? Because I already said I think judgment is the most important skill in the AI era. It's about keeping your judgment at the center. This entire talk or class is about human performance. It's about performing at your best and for your team at your best. If you are not doing that, if you're keeping yourself out, first of all, I think you're setting yourself up for trouble, okay, for the things that we talked about, for many of the reasons we talked about earlier. But even if, let's say, AI is actually better at making decisions than you need to think about what are the decisions you're asking it to make, right? You have to abstract away the level in which your decision. So for example, let's say AI is choosing what you want to have for dinner. It's a very low stakes decision. Kind of doesn't matter, right? Like it's not really going to be that bad if it goes right or goes wrong. But asking it to completely plan out your food plan for the week and then following it is not a really good idea. So again, keeping your judgment is what makes the difference in how you can get this done. And using AI as an engine for suggestion and execution works. Now, someone here is probably already using AI agents. You may have a lot of stuff automated. You can say to me, well, Ted, that's ridiculous. You're just not writing those prompts, you're not implementing properly. And what I would say to you is this. If you don't have a human quality control step in your process, you are going to hit a brick wall sooner or later. And I'll tell you some stories, but the reason is, sooner or later, AI will hit an exception case that it can't understand, and it will not tell you that, and it will pretend that it knows the answer, and you will not find out until you get fired by your client. So I come from the hedge fund space originally, right, the finance space, and we have been automating things for quite a long time, for decades, right? So some of you understand how stocks and bonds and foreign exchange are traded. Everything's obviously electronically. Well, at some point in time, it was traded by humans. When they, like literally humans, right, making deals, like me going to you, making weird hand signals and talking about what I want to buy or sell. Well, that became automated. That was my first career. A lot of that was automation of that, both the electronic interchange of the information and then the actual decision making. So it became so fast, and we're talking about first milliseconds, then in literally nanoseconds, okay, that humans can't possibly make those decisions. So then why are there, and you do understand there's, these Wall Street guys getting paid all of this money to trade stocks. What are they doing now? The function, this is about 15 years ago when I was a CTO in one of these funds, what do we have our humans doing? They had one job. Their job was to stop the machine when they thought that it was wrong. That's it. They weren't trying to make the machine be better in real time. After the fact, yes, but during execution, during the hours the markets were open or whatever, there was literally a button, like you make it red, okay? And you say, stop, stop. This machine is not operating properly. Something changed in the parameters in which we trained this thing that we have to stop, and now we need to reevaluate what's going on. Problem is, you push this all the time, what happens? You lose money. That's why it's a tricky job that they get paid a lot of money, right? It's like autopilot on a plane. When do you turn off the autopilot as a pilot? I don't know. That's I have no idea. I'm not a pilot. Okay? But these guys were pilots of trading machines. So again, the whole point of it was, even when we had machines making literally millions of decisions, we had humans at the end as the ultimate responsibility. And I think this is true for a lot of things we do. And so maybe, and again, just a quick diversion, maybe some of you have heard of the concept of brain fry or cognitive overload in terms of using AI. Have any show of hands, people have heard this term? Right, this idea of I'm getting AI, I'm launching all these agents, I'm launching all these threads, and now it's really, like, I can't deal with this. Like, it's driving me crazy trying to figure out what's going on, right? And the reason is because your human judgment is so important. Without your human judgment, you couldn't keep this under control. So what's happened is you haven't scaled your judgment. You've only scaled your execution, okay? And then if that happens, your judgment is not at the center, right? Because as soon as you take your attention off, it's off doing the wrong thing, right? So again, that's why this is a principle. None of these principles are really going to talk about implementation. They're going to talk about what's important and like the stories that you're going to get there. So now let me give you some examples. There's a lot of content in the book, obviously. I can't possibly cover it all here. So there are 5 superpowers. I'm going to walk through 2 of them that will tell you more about some of the implementation using the principles that we just talked about. And these 2 are strategic clarity and learn anything. Okay, so strategic clarity. Now, again, I talked about this concept of keeping your judgment in the center. I talked about how as you get older, you develop pattern recognition, which becomes strategic thinking. So then why am I saying AI can help you with your strategy? Why would I say that? It seems the opposite of what I would say. Well, the reality of it is it can help you if you don't ask it to develop your strategy, right? If you ask it to develop your strategy, that's how you're violating the principle and it goes wrong. But it's incredibly powerful to help you think through your strategy, right? So let's go through the example that you talked about, like, hey, I've got a client, I'm trying to figure out how to close this client. I'm just sending some emails, it's going back and forth, and it's going nowhere. I have no idea what the hell is going on, all right? Now, again, hey, Claude, tell me how to close this client. It will give you some crazy-ass answer. Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not, but you certainly can't use it, right? Instead, you could say, listen, here's the approach that I used previously to close this client. Here are some ideas of why I said, you know what, I'm going to call the CEO, or you know what, directly, right? I'm going to go jump the guy that I'm talking to, I'm going to call their CEO directly. Or here's an idea, you know, I'm going to cut the price right now, right? I haven't heard anything back, I'm going to cut the price by 20%. And then you say, listen, if that were true, okay, if this my strategic claim of cutting 20% is going to close this deal, what else needs to be true? And they said, well, okay, if that's true, then what matters is that this customer is actually buying on price, that they're actually price sensitive, right? Maybe that's not true, right? And so that would never work. Again, there are all these different ways that AI can help you think more critically about a decision that you want to make. So again, your strategy made more powerful by using AI in a strong way, not asking it to take your brain out of the equation, but improving that. And also doing it in a way that is going to be interacting with the actual market in a more safe way. So again, you could simulate that reaction, right? We talked about here. You could say, hey, listen, do these approaches. If I were to tell the client 20%, they're making these assumptions, now how do you think they might respond? Right? And again, this is where a large language model, because it is built probabilistically, I don't know how many people here are technical or not, but whatever, these models are probabilistic engines. They are prediction engines at their very core. They're trained on the corpus of human knowledge, okay? But now, of course, there's this weird recursive iterative cycle where they're starting to be trained on the same junk that comes out. That's a different question. That's a totally different masterclass. But this masterclass talks about, hey, while it's being trained on all of this stuff, it is probabilistically trying to figure out literally what the next word is, but also what the right answer is. That means it's actually very good at simulation and scenario analysis, right? Because it's by its nature a probabilistic tool looking at all the various possibilities that it has been trained on, right? And that, again, if you look in the internet, almost anything that you have a strong opinion about, of course, you can find someone else that has the opposite strong opinion, right? That is what's trained. So again, this is the strategic clarity. So let me take a pause right here and just really say if there's anyone who wants to talk a little bit more about a use case that you might personally have, and then we can just go through it for 2 minutes. Anybody? All right, go.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Sebastian. Actually, I'm doing what you're doing for the Spanish market, for the people that is doing the things
Awesome.
in Spanish. So my problem right now is like I'm trying to create these mental models in people so they think differently how to approach AI and apply it to their thinking. So, for example, how you can make people change their approach to thinking if they have these biases that they think I'm right, nobody else is right, I'm right.
It's impossible. So when you get that question, you have to tell them to call me instead. No. Okay, seriously. seriously, it's like anything else. People need to be shown, right? I think the problem is the book or anything like this, I go through a lot of stories. When I'm on stage, I talk about a lot of stories because I don't think it is I think the biases are incredibly strong, right? And the bigger problem to me for a lot of AI implementation, especially for these kinds of things, is that it makes people feel nervous, right? It makes you you don't feel good when AI seems like it might be smarter than you, right? And you have to get past that, right? And so there is no simple answer, is what I would say to you on that one, right? I think for anything where you're talking about this kind of a use case, where you're talking about critical decisions, the important thing is go slowly, right? The important thing is change management. Some of you may understand that, maybe some of you don't. But really, the point of this is humans suck at change. Humans don't like things to change. They like things to basically be the same that they previously were. Now, some of you may be like nodding. Okay, I see a lot of nods. But some of you may be like, dude, that's not true. I want to eat like new food every day or whatever. Yeah, but you don't want that to happen with your paycheck, do you? Your boss every day goes, you know what? Today was a $5 day. Here's €5 day. Tomorrow's a €50 day. Tomorrow, yes, today, you know what? You owe me €5. You sucked, right? No one wants that. You actually want things to mostly look like what they are. And I think what's been missing for a lot of this is thinking about all of the particular, precise examples in your workplace that can be done better rather than as a replacement of the thinking that you currently have. I think the framing of it that you, when you're out there, or I, when I'm out there, I'm one person against multi-billion-dollar worth of marketing from Anthropic and OpenAI, right? That is saying almost exactly the opposite, right? And it's driving a lot of fear. So I think it really is about a change management exercise. It's really about you yourself thinking through that problem together with somebody. And honestly, it's about holding their hand and trying that implementation. Again, I talk about this in a lot of stories in the book. I really do think stories are the better way we do this, but you really learn by example. You really cannot learn any other way. And again, one of the good things about, this is a great segue into my next superpower, is using AI to learn, right? Because we're able to use AI in a way that dynamically adapts to you. Okay, so look, humans have been teaching and learning for thousands and thousands of years, maybe longer, right? But let's talk about recorded history. So for 5,000, 6,000 years, we've been able to write and teach. Okay, and the whole point of that is one very fundamental principle, which is separation of knowledge from the use of knowledge, right? So this is like core in our education, but we never talk about it. Right? Now, there's some very good reasons, of course. Like some things are such low-level building blocks that you have to understand the building blocks before you get to understand more, right? But so much of education is, whoa, if I teach you while using it while you're learning it, then one of those is going to be weaker. Your knowledge, your fundamental knowledge is weaker. Your use of that knowledge is going to be weaker. I call BS on that. That is crap, okay? I don't think that's how humans learned historically. I don't think that's how we learn now. Now, if you learn differently yourself and you know yourself, listen, you go with what you know. But I think that most of us, okay, certainly if we talk about something that isn't purely intellectual, understand that doing it repeatedly, then applying the knowledge while you're learning it, as opposed to learning a big pile of it and then applying it, okay, is going to help you internalize that knowledge faster and more effectively. And we are also starting to see this in education, like the more formal education systems all around the world, right? Is this acknowledgement that maybe we shouldn't spend 12, 13 years only talking about what comes out of textbooks or videos or whatever, and we should really instead talk about, let's take some real applications of those problems. Well, here we go. One of the things AI does for younger people, or if it's a skill or something that you don't know, is that it helps you climb up that curve of experience, right? And it can do that against real work. And that, I think, is the biggest difference, right? Because any book, including my own, is static. It has static examples in it, right? And so you're not able to adapt those static examples. If you're not able to adapt those static examples yourself, then you don't get as much value out of that, right? So you go, well, that use case, okay. In this book, they talked about, cars, and I don't know how to drive. I don't know what a car is, right? I don't know who that might be, but whatever. I don't know what a car is. I don't understand cars, okay? Horses, okay? How about horses? The examples are all about horses, and I've never ridden a horse. I'm afraid of horses. I have no idea what horses are. So this example has no meaning for me. I can't possibly internalize that knowledge because this example is totally ridiculous, right? So the difference of that is to say, look, if we accept that knowledge, right, foundational knowledge should be used together with the use of knowledge, we should then accept that the use of knowledge that's most effective is actually using real work examples. Right? So let's go back to the internships. One of the reasons you do internships is, of course, to get a job, and that works on both sides. Right? The employer wants the most brightest people and vice versa. You find that out because you have them work on real things, not the biggest break your company things, but things that are real, because they've already been learning throughout all of their primary, secondary, tertiary education on things that are fake and made up. Now, in your workplace, you're working on your real problems. But the problem with that is you can't always do this because you can't think of necessarily all those examples, right? If I'm the boss and I've got my job to do, and now I've got a few interns. Here's a little secret. Most bosses have no time for the interns because they don't get paid for the interns, right? That's not their job. Their job is still the same requirements regardless of how many interns they have. So you get completely second or third hand or fourth hand stuff, right? That's not great, and basically then you only hire self-starters. Now listen, self-starters are great, certainly in terms of startups. But what AI can do is it can take a real-world situation, map that against the foundational knowledge you need, and if you've got foundational knowledge that you're missing, teach you that foundational knowledge at the same time that it is working on a real problem that has not yet been solved in the workplace. So as an employer, or as a leader, or as a person, you can use examples to learn against without the cost of failure associated with directly doing that. Does that make sense? So this is really the superpower of learn anything. It is, in my mind, a new paradigm for how we learn, right? Because we've gone through this approach where way back when, if you were very rich in ancient Greece or ancient Rome, you had a tutor, right? And only the very rich, right? And that was the way, one-on-one, one-on-one, one-on-one. This is how we learned. Now, in the last couple hundred years, less than a couple hundred years, we have the ability to do that at scale, which is in places like this. One person up front, multiple people learning that. With AI, we can go back to one-on-one with the same efficacy of this 1 to 30 at the same costs, is my point. Efficacy in terms of cost, right? This, and again, supersede that, because now I'm able to do this with real stuff. I'm able to do this with real problems, not made up boring problems about horses that I don't know how to ride, but real problems about the cars that I'm driving, in Ferrari or wherever I'm doing this. Okay, that is learn anything. So now, the other thing about learning anything is that you don't have to formalize it. You don't have to make this a deliberate learning thing. You build learning into everything you do, okay? So again, this one I'm just making, again, quiet reflection a little bit, which is, do you guys ever know what a knowledge silo is? Do people understand? It's the idea that some people have some knowledge that they aren't sharing with other people, right? That's the basic general idea. So in your workplace, think about where you've got knowledge that lives in the mind of one person, right? Or lives in the mind of a few people. Or it's something that, oh yeah, you know what? We encountered that situation and we wrote down how to deal with this. And then the next time you look at it, you go, oh my God, no one updated this in 5 years. Think about where those knowledge silos exist, right? And the reason these knowledge silos exist is because you're not teachers in an operating company. That's not your job. Now, maybe if you're a big organization, you might have people like that. But most people have nothing, zero, in terms of staff whose job it is to actually think like a teacher or a professor and train people in that way. The best that they do is to hire third-party people to come in, right? But now, you could say, hey, listen, I've got this information that Pedro has over here, right? And if Pedro goes on vacation, we're screwed, right? Now, I know this is less true here in Europe. You guys are a lot more humane. But in America, the result is we don't let Pedro go on vacation, okay, without taking his cell phone. Because we know, hey, Pedro, you want to be able to come back and have a job? Then if we call you, you need to answer. Because you're the only freaking person that knows this, okay? That's America. But anyway, whether that's good or bad, probably not great. Probably not great for Pedro. Let's let Pedro take a vacation by taking his knowledge and disseminating that in a deliberate way that doesn't look like Pedro's training his replacement. Pedro's not doing that. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to tell Luis everything that I know? Well, you're going to fire me then, right? No, you're not doing that. You're taking, say, Pedro's emails. You're analyzing his interactions with clients, for example, right? All of this stuff is information. And then you're saying, I'm going to build a model using AI that isn't as good as Pedro, right? It's not as good as Pedro, but it's much better than nobody when he's not here, right? Knock down that silo without having to deliberately have him go train somebody else, which again, he will not do because he likes being employed, right? And you will not push him. Because if he says, dude, if you make me do this, I quit, what, you're going to tell him? Go, no, sorry, Pedro, you're fired? No, Pedro's got the knowledge already. So think about this. AI can knock down those informational and knowledge silos, right? And that's one thing that it can do, right, which is a little bit more of this kind of digital twin idea or silo breaking, okay? But it can do other stuff, right? We talked about how we can map to real-world examples, right? This kind of live work, right? This state of, we're going to model what's happening with this real-world client, but we're not going to actually have you email the client. Your emails go to ChatGPT instead, and it's going to pretend it's going to take the role of the client instead. Okay? Another thing here is faster reps, right? Just repetitions, just like the gym, right? If you want to get good at something, you practice by doing it, right? You heard of the 10,000 hours or whatever. But one of the bigger problems is, by definition, if you're in the workplace, you're supposed to be working on real work stuff that helps you make money. When do you have time to practice on that stuff, right? When do you have time to really look and analyze what might have gone wrong? You really don't, right? And so what do? You analyze when it really, really went badly. When maybe you might want to analyze when it really, really went well. Or, and this is a discipline that I learned at hedge funds, not all hedge funds, you all know what a hedge fund is, right? But like, you might think that every hedge fund, therefore, is obsessed with higher returns, and of course they are. But actually, the really good ones are not just obsessed with higher returns for nothing, right? Because if you say, listen, I expected an 8% return on this trade, and I got a 20% return. Woohoo! Like, I'm done, right? I'm a freaking genius. But no, dude, you are actually wrong in terms of how, let's say 150%, right? You were 150% wrong in your ability to estimate the results of that trade. What if you were 150% wrong in the other direction? Okay? You just happen to be right. But what if you were wrong? So that level of discipline, I've only ever seen in one employer, right? Because most of them, again, are going to say 8, 20, celebrate. I'm a freaking genius. But you really need to say, hey, is there something we can learn from this without demoralizing people, making them unhappy, but create an explanation and understand what may have happened and really dig into it. You can do it recursively. And again, the whole point is on the bottom is AI does not replace experience, right? The point here is experience is the key. It goes back to judgment. It goes back to why this book is about helping people be more powerful, helping you do more, as opposed to just replacing a whole bunch of people. Because my thesis is that experience is valuable and it's not easily translatable, right? So that doesn't mean, modeling Pedro isn't useful. It means let's make Pedro more effective while he's doing this without having him just train all these different people, right? Okay, that's 2. There are 3 others. I'm not going to go through all that. We've got some time, but I want to get to Q&A. I want to hear about the stuff that you guys are doing. So the 2 that we covered, right? And then there are 3 others, right? 10x execution, enhanced connection, orchestrated life. Unfortunately, enhanced connection is probably closer to what some of your questions might have been in terms of how you can use it in terms of communication. Orchestrated life probably sounds like what it means, right? The idea of using it as part of, like, let's call it a super hyper-intelligent assistant that can help manage all the aspects of your life. And 10 execution sounds normal, right? Oh man, like, let's just figure out how to get things to go faster. But again, when you factor in the second principle of aim first, right, then accelerate, it's not as simple as it sounds, right? Because going faster, again, without aiming is bad. So this is the universe of superpowers, the 5 superpowers that derive from the 4. So now, before we get to some Q&A, let me just talk a little bit more, although we touched on this, is the point of what I've been thinking about, because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an investor, I'm working on a ton of different projects, I'm doing a lot of different things, not just standing in front of rooms and talking to people. So I want to understand how I can be more effective with the teams that I have that are working in the various companies that I have or I'm part of, right? And so it's not just about individually doing something, right? So it's not just about AI fluency. This is really about an architecture. It's really about, as we said on some of these earlier slides, about an operating system, right? And so this is, I think, a very true thing about a lot of places and how they give out AI licenses, right? Which is they say, hey, listen, man, we bought you all these licenses for Claude or ChatGPT, so when am I going to get my efficiency return, right? The CEO is like, look, we invested $500,000 in buying you all licenses, so you guys are supposed to figure this stuff out, right? Really, come on, right? And yet, many places, that's really what it boils down to, right? And what happens is if people are experimenting privately, that's not a strategy. All right? What makes a workplace is its workflows. And a lot of the workflows pre-AI are garbage. I mean, I'm sure you all understand this. Go and get your driver's license renewed or interact with your bureaucracy, your governmental bureaucracy anyway, and you better believe the people who execute that workflow did not create it and don't care, right? They just follow the steps. That's going to be true in almost every organization. So being able to have good shared rewritten workflows, rituals, and judgment is the key, and doing this in a very visible way. So I'm just going to let this one just sit out here. I'm probably not even going to talk about this too much, but think about this in your mind a little bit. And the idea here is redesigning workflow rather than automation. Okay? And I really can't stress this one enough. I think there are so many workflows that, again, were poorly designed or never designed, and speeding them up, again, right? We talk about execution, we talk about aim, right? Just making it go faster is not the point. Making something go faster that's wrong isn't good, right? It isn't good. Now, in some cases, of course, speed helps, right? So go back, to the US, again, getting your driver's license renewed is one of these like really ridiculous things that you wonder why it takes so damn long. And you can say, well, all right, we should make this faster with AI. AI can fill in all these holes or whatever, right? But a lot of cases, a lot of the stuff in a pre-AI world, right, that a lot of workers do, a lot of knowledge workers do, is moving knowledge from one thing to the other, right? It's a workflow where you're manipulating some amount of data, and then you're putting it to someone else who's manipulating some other piece of data, right? That is ripe for redesign. Even with AI, it was something that you could have redesigned and get efficiencies. Now, it is even more so. So one of the biggest things that when you go from using your own ability at its peak to your team going at its peak is redesigning your workflows. Because if you don't do that, you're really not going to get all of the power. And again, I'll jump to the bottom. The goal is not to have an AI-driven company, right? You don't want AI running your company. And I know some people, there's all sorts of hype, right? They're all hype. AI. End of the day, that's only until it works and stops working, right? If it works, then people are saying that. When it stops working, then people are going to stop saying that, right? And end of the day, a lot of this is just hype. You want a human-led company with machine-augmented judgment, right? In other words, powering your most powerful people. So how do you do that? These are the three things that we talked about, right? So one important thing I have almost not yet talked about is shared language, right? So it's really important, at least in my mind, that if you want to get things done, you have to be talking and speaking the same language, right? So much time is wasted, and then literally between, say, Espanol and English, but I mean even just the words that people will do in a company. Let's talk about closing a deal. How many words are there to close a deal? Hundreds, okay? And so people, when you say close, you might have a different idea than he does. You both ask me the same question, use the same words, right? And, because close to me means when I've delivered the services, and close to the finance guys, no, that's when they've paid. Right? And then close to someone else, close to your sales guy is like, no. As soon as the guy just nodded at me, that deal's closed, and you got to pay me my commission, right? So look, shared language and defining what that means has nothing to do with AI. But if you don't do it, AI will operate on the non-shared language that you use in your organization, and you will break your organization, right? Simple thing like close. Okay? Really, a simple thing like close. Because what one person will do, and they'll use AI to go type something else, and someone else will do the same thing. If you guys don't have the same idea of what that means, okay, a shared language of what that goal is, you will arrive at the different place, and it will break because AI got you there so damn fast, right? Rituals are the next thing. So I'm sure you've all heard that this technology will eliminate your meetings, right? Slack is maybe the most recent one. Oh, just implement Slack, and before that it was Wikis or SharePoint or whatever. And as soon as you have a website, we're not going to need meetings anymore, right? But how many meetings do you have, right? Everyone has this ridiculous amount of meetings, right? But the shared rituals of meetings, making your meetings more effective. Everybody uses AI note taker, right? And probably people are using AI note takers to catch up on meetings that you weren't on, right? Or to refresh your head, like, oh, what the hell happened in that meeting? I'm going to look at the AI note taker, right? But there's so many more of the rituals that you are going on in your day-to-day operations of your life, of your team, that you can augment together with AI. And now finally, the shared judgment. Okay, and again, the shared here is obviously shared with humans. It's also shared with your team. I do believe, and we've talked about this a few times, you know, for all of us, we're going to be using AI together to make ourselves better. And so that means our decisions, while they have to be owned by us, are going to have a lot of other external stakeholders. So last slide, I think, close to you before we get to Q&A, and it's just really this, okay? I believe the AI age is not going to belong to just the youngest, fastest, or most technical. It will belong to the people who combine AI with human judgment. This has always been true. Implementation matters. It still matters. Well, a lot of the reasons I think that people fail in being effective with AI, they're using it to do the wrong thing, and they're not really thinking about it of how to combine your human judgment with the goal that you want to do. So now, this will be a little bit of an extended Q&A period. I have 11 minutes left, which is a ton of time, but if we finish early, hey, you know, drinks faster. Okay, so I'm going to give away books to people that I think are the most interesting problems. So I have 3 books, so 3 people, okay? So that means more than 3 people I'm going to call on you, so let's go. So a minute each, okay? Please. So tell me about a real problem you have implementing AI that's something like this. We are trying to use AI for blah, but the hard part is blah. And let's just see what we can go. All right, who wants to go? Go.
Hi, I work for a group of private hospitals. And we're
What's your name?
Maria.
Okay.
And we're trying to use, we have many use cases, but the one that seems more inspiring or more challenging to me is using it for diagnosis. Just because, as you say, we will not replace, and that's a red line, the judgment of the doctor. I feel it's very condescending when we think that AI can bias the doctor, because books can also bias the doctor. But I think the biggest challenge is implementing it. No, it's not implementing it, and it's not. I just think it's easier than it looks, but the perception of patients, I think that's the biggest gap, because people just want to be heard sometimes when they go to the doctor. But then you're seeing right now that people use AI as a psychologist too.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think the hardest part is perception and thinking that we are not dehumanizing the process, but rather perfectioning it.
Yeah.
And making it more precise.
So I think that's a great example. I think the key here, perception absolutely is the reality here. It is as you say, when you're trying to go to the doctor to be healed, it isn't just the symptom that you're trying to heal. You want to feel that the doctor has it under control. They care about you. They look you in the eye, they tap your knee or whatever, and then they feel like they understand the problem, and a machine isn't going to give you that, even if it's correct, right? So I think there's something, again, more holistic about that. And then the perception of this, so I think the generalized form, medicine is a very specific domain where I think this will always exist, right? There are other domains, such as, say, cooking, where this exists, because we don't go and get our food from a machine that makes food. We don't eat our food. We want food made by chefs that spend a lot of time and they've learned their craft, right? Because it's not just about the calories, it's not just about the nutrition, it's about the experience of going to a doctor. So trying to use AI for something that is a human experience is absurd. It's absurd, right? I mean, that's not to say that we can't provide some kind of reasonable facsimile if all you need is cough medicine, right? That's very different. But trying to really make them feel and understand is difficult. Now, of course, my friend over here, is working on IP and AI creation of IP, stuff like movies and video games and things like this. And of course, video games are a human experience, right? But the crafting, the interesting crafting of that is human-driven, right? Humans using powerful AI tools to create it. So I think that's a very good one. It's certainly a real problem. I have no solution for this. I honestly don't think it's possible. I think that barrier is incredibly valuable, and much like cooking, it isn't that we don't know how to make more nutritious stuff. It's that we would rather have it be authentic and maybe tasty at the same time. Okay, someone else. Let's go in the back.
Yeah, we are trying to use AI for corporate leadership development, for learning, for soft skills. Yeah, so, and the hard part is So there were 2 points which everybody understood good. It's football and politics. So now one more thing, that's AI. Yeah, so we use the same large models. Yeah, so that's why clients think that they will do it cheaper, better, and more secure. So to reinvent value of vendors, yeah, for B2B markets. That's a hard part.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think AI, again, because of so much hype and so much of the narrative is about this technology is going to replace us, it's going to do all these wonderful things, that anyone who's a little bit more humane about this is viewed like you're crazy, right? And then your own people don't believe you, right? And I think that, so this is covered in the book, but something I'll just tell you, I think the best thing, goes back to change management I said earlier, is you have to develop trust. Without trust, you can't do anything, right? I don't care if it's AI. You could go and hire a new person, and everyone goes, wait, did you really just hire this woman to do the job you think is, or she's really going to take my job, right? Because I can't trust you, boss. I don't trust you. So without trust, you don't need AI to screw this up. You need football or politics. It doesn't matter. People are going to have a vision in their mind of what it does that's brought by someone else, and just kind of your regular fear. This goes back to what we talked about. People want repetitiveness. They kind of want safety, right? You as a manager, as a leader, have to understand that. And you have to be able to establish that safety with AI. You have to, right? And it's not to say that people are dumb. They're not. They're not looking you to lie to them. They're looking you to at least be honest. Say, listen, guys, I am trying to hire fewer people, right? Like, we're not as profitable as we used to be. We need to augment the stuff that we do with technology. But I am not an idiot. I understand that the token prices that I'm paying right now are going to go up because we're in the Uber phase of this, right? We all remember we got Uber. Uber was so damn cheap. Uber's so cheap. Why is it so cheap? Because it's being subsidized by Sand Hill Road, okay? When they stopped doing that, the price shot up. Guess what? Tokens are going to do the same thing. So people understand this, and you just need to clearly communicate it with your team. You have to build the trust first. There's no other way. There's no shortcut to that. Next.
Here.
Oh, they're already passing it. Okay, go over there.
Thank you. I'm Luciano. I'm founder of a tech services firm. We basically implement ERP and CRM systems. We work with Oracle and Salesforce. So we're trying to make the experience of implementation of software more agentic and AI-led by our client being able to interact with their system in natural language, ask it things, and maybe ask him, hey, configure my sales cycle in Salesforce, and it goes and does it for you. The hard part is that training a model like this requires a lot of human feedback, and for my consultants to basically tell the model, hey, this response is correct, this one is not. But do they think they're actually training the very same tool that is gonna make them fire them or something? So requires a lot of trust in that this is the future, and if they don't embrace the project because they think they're gonna get fired, then it's hard to advance.
Right, so I think there's a couple answers here. One is certainly generational, right? So younger workers have been screwed over by a lot of different things. You might remember the pandemic. You might remember the financial crisis, right? You might remember all sorts of things like this. Younger generations really don't believe that we're not full of crap, right? So there's a fundamental problem. It's got nothing to do with you as a boss, right? The thing about training and effectiveness, again, I think part of it is changing the lens of how your people are viewing what you are doing, right? And if you... Again, nothing works better than repetition and saying, look, I understand. John is my best freaking closer. John, you are the best closer, all right? I'm not trying to replace you, right? I'm not even necessarily trying to pay you less money because sales is commission-based, right? So hopefully if John makes more money, it's because you make more money, right? I'm trying to make you more effective. I'm trying to give you a more powerful team. And yeah, fine, I'm not trying to hire 3 people to pretend to be John. Okay, because that doesn't really work, because John's like, I'm not going to train my replacement, human or AI, right? He's not going to do either of those things. But if you say, listen, John, it goes back to the Pedro's not going on vacation. John be like, I don't care, I'm not going to go on vacation, these are my clients. Well, then you got a different problem with John, right? So that you got to understand that this doesn't mean there are not bad employees. There are also bad employees, right? But assuming that he's willing to play ball, you need to go meet him halfway, I think is part of it, or more than halfway, honestly, because of what this can do. And to get people to train the models, what you convey is, listen, this is happening no matter what, because if it's not us, it's our competitors, and then we will be out of a job, and all of you will be out of a job. right? I will be out of a job because this business will not be performing, and you will be out of a job, right? So instead, we have to build these tools to be understanding of this. I need you to help and do this, but then you have to follow through, right? Because if there's no trust as a boss or whatever, no one will believe you, then it simply doesn't matter, right? So again, no simple answer here, but again, I think it's a change management trust thing, but I think it's also about you need to buy him as many copies of this book as necessary and force him to read it. How about that? Okay, can we go over here? Do you guys have anything over here? No? All right, go. Here, get her a mic, please.
I'm building a tool for managers also to kind of have an operating system daily. So I'm connected to everything that you have said. But the hard part is is turning that into a habit, into a daily habit.
Yeah. So this is actually, I think, an easy question. Thank you. No, honestly, habits are important to understand, right? I think it is about showing value, of course. If it's not valuable and it feels like make work or feels like I'm trading my replacement or whatever, then people are not going to want to do it. I personally, this is in the book, but I'll just tell you, have built a lot of agents to create, basically run my day-to-day daily rituals for me. I actually don't even necessarily read them all, right? Because if my day is relatively empty, I don't need AI to tell me I have a relatively empty day, thank you very much, right? But the key is so you have to build in, let's call it like the little surprises, right? There's something that makes it look like it's not just some boring piece of text that's coming through, that it's really like, here's something super interesting. This is no different than you log into your social media or whatever, this is early, right? And it told you, hey, this is so-and-so's birthday. And you go, oh, that's so amazing, let it help me remember someone's birthday, right? But this is the same thing that might happen in a work context. And I don't know specifically what you're trying to do, but what it could do is say, hey, here's something super interesting you probably didn't think of. Now, there's all sorts of boring things I need to go through with you because this is a job, and we need to know, how many, lines of code you coded yesterday. No. Okay, that's not what's going to get you excited. But what you might get you excited is, oh, did you know that like this piece of software that you wrote, just got, 600 stars on GitHub or something like that, right? Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that, or whatever, right? And there's a certain wonder and discovery that I would put into your day-to-day messages that make it so that the ritual gets developed. Right? But end of the day, it is like going to the gym. If it's going to be good for you, sometimes it's just going to have to be the discipline of it. But sometimes you just want to have that really good day where you feel really strong, and then you're going to remember that good day for the future. Right? One more, real quick. In the middle, please. You. The woman who's turning around thinking I'm not talking to her. Okay, while we're doing this, folks, you can scan this to buy the damn book. No, but seriously, all sorts of free crap I'm willing to give away, blah, blah, blah. And contact me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go ahead.
So I'm a student, and we are trying as students to implement AI to become more efficient, to learn better, to enhance our work. And the hard part is convincing students in academia that this is not replacing our critical thinking, but just making us better performers.
Interesting. So I think it's a hard part because it feels like cheating? Is that right? It feels like cheating? So it's funny because I would imagine most students don't agonize over this like you do. I'm surprised that you're telling me that you feel like you think it's cheating. No, honestly, your professors think that it's cheating, right? But I agree, and it's very responsible of you, I think, for students to say, listen, I'm paying for something, I want to go learn for something. But again, there's a huge world of difference with saying, go write this for me, okay? Because it's no different than turning around to the woman next to you or to my buddy next to you and saying, go write my paper for me. I'm going to learn nothing. Hey, AI, go write my paper for me. I'm going to learn nothing. As opposed to, hey, help me think through the structure of the ideas that I have for this. Help me research what's going on with this. Help me think through something I didn't understand. This is the devil's advocate stuff. Again, you can figure this out on your own or not. Get the free prompt, scan my QR code. No, but seriously, even without that, you can understand that what feels like cheating is cheating. This is not magic, right? We, again, don't need AI to cheat. So if you think it's cheating, and I understand students have other concerns of environmental concerns and these kinds of things, but if you feel like you're not learning, then it's the way you're using it is not helping you learn, right? You can literally give it the instruction. I am a student. It might not listen to you, no, so that's a separate thing. But listen, you can give it a system prompt that I am a student. Do not tell me the explicit answers. Instead, I want you to lead me to the answer, right? And it may or may not work, some more specific help there. But you do want to ultimately get to the point of if it feels like cheating, that's probably because it is, and so you should think about it in a way where you're breaking down the kind of fundamentals of knowledge. All right, I'm going to do one more. I'm over time, and again, beer. Who hasn't gone? You. One. You. You need a mic. Yell! Fine, hurry up. And then I'm going to give away.
Try to be fast. Yeah, I'm trying to build a wealth management software as a service. And I'm trying to build an app in which you can connect your bank accounts, your brokers, and everything, and try to put AI in it to help you make your best financial decisions, your projections into the future. And the hardest part is trying to convince people that the recommendations that the AI is giving them, they're worthy, and in order to trust them. So that's the hardest part. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have a quick answer to that. I think that it's like everything else. You have to demonstrate the value, right? Again, it probably has no value because it gave you bad answers, right? So humans are always going to think that they're better than AI. They're probably right because those are your best people. But again, if you can find like the interesting example, it goes back to what I said to her, right? If you can find the interesting example, you'd be like, oh man, like I can't believe I figured this thing out. Like I can't believe this thing figured out. It's so freaking cool. Then you've learned something. Okay, thank you everybody.